Volodymyr Zelenskiy was in Brussels yesterday. He met Ursula von der Leyen. Also, they had two very important coordinating meetings, including with leaders who joined them today in Washington. And there was a great sense of unity. And it's rightly so, because it's about security not only of Ukraine and in Europe. What about expectations? We need to use this momentum because President Trump invested a lot of political capital to get it done. There is a readiness, at least readiness on the Russian side to talk. And now we need to use this momentum, but we have to talk from the position of force, and we have this possibility. So the stakes are high, the expectations are high.
Yep. Expectations are high. Okay, so we're managing expectations up here in terms of how we should be thinking about the meeting. Steve Witkoff over the weekend talked about security guarantees. Article 5 like security guarantees. How would that work? What would that look like from a European perspective? And is that something that would allow Ukraine maybe to accept a peace deal along the lines of what is being talked about, i.e. some territorial loss to Russia in return for security guarantees? Is that what is being set out here?
About security guarantees. First of all, the best security guarantee for us is a strong Ukrainian army. And our army is strong, but we need to take additional efforts to make it even more powerful and being able to defend not only Ukraine, but also to become a contribution to the European security in the future. What we need for that is a continuation of the US support, and we understand that US is ready to continue to provide Ukraine with weapons, and there is arrangement with European partners how to financially arrange it. And also, we need to use what is possible, I mean, financially and from the Commission program standpoint, SAFE program, for instance, to make Ukraine a full participant of those new initiatives, to use our experience, to use our military defense base, and to make sure that we are able, in the medium and long term, to defend ourselves. This is the most important point. But definitely, we also count on European support, and there were different ideas, including boots on the ground. We also need definitely US backup, and especially the last point will be discussed today. What US could offer to underpin this idea to defend Ukraine.
Ambassador, I want to push you on that question again. What, in your opinion, is achieving U.S. security guarantees worth it if Ukraine has to concede some territory?
Look, I can only repeat what President Zelensky said yesterday here in Brussels. We are not going to acknowledge legally any loss of territory. If we are going to have any discussion on the territory, there should be a discussion with Ukraine, eventually in trilateral format. But we cannot prejudge the results of this discussion, neither today nor in a trilateral format later.
And in your mind, how are these discussions going to go today? We know that U.S. President Trump is meeting with Zelensky one-on-one, before then including the wider European audience. Do you think that Europe and Ukraine are going to be successful in pushing for these demands today?
I think it is important also to brief President Trump, and I'm sure President Zelensky will do so, what is the real situation on the ground. What is actually possible for Ukraine to accept. And definitely it's important that European leaders today supporting President Zelensky. And it's also a great opportunity to show that Europe is united, Europe is helping Ukraine, and Europe is able, together with the United States, to speak to Russia from the position of force. And we have to remember that this is a reality. Russia is a very simple and small economy comparing to US, comparing to Europe. And it is possible to exert serious pressure on Russia. And Russia understands only language of force.
Ambassador, should that include secondary sanctions? Is that something that you think the Europeans are being slow in pursuing? Secondary sanctions on countries like India and also China?
So European Union started to work on 19 package, and it's very important. And definitely there is a coordination within the G7 format how to continue this sanction pressure on Russia, including secondary sanctions. And I think you remember in the previous 18 sanction package already few companies from the third countries, they're being sanctioned. And the first time probably the Indian companies, they felt the pressure. And it's much more difficult now to buy the Russian oil, which is brought to the markets using the shadow fleets. So it's happening now. And we need to build up this pressure to make sure Russia understands the consequences if they are not cooperative and choose negotiated solution over the war solution.
Yep. Ambassador, what was the Ukrainian read of the meeting that took place in Alaska on Friday? There seemed to be a withdrawal of this idea that there should be a ceasefire. What is your reaction to that? And is that something that will continue to be pushed for today by the Ukrainians, that we do see a ceasefire before talks can continue?
That's for sure. And it's important to stop the killing right now. And definitely President Zelensky will push to get back this agenda item for to negotiating table, both with President Trump, but also during eventual trilateral meeting. Yes, there were expectations in Ukraine that meeting in Alaska would bring the agreement on ceasefire or get us closer to this agreement. It didn't happen, and definitely we need to try to get back to this discussion.